This is the story of Delta Airlines Flight 9570. On the 30th of May 1972, a DC-9 was flying from Dallas Love Field Airport to the Greater Southwest International Airport and then back again to Love Field. The plane was on a training flight for 2 captain trainees. The plane had 3 pilots and 1 FAA representative on board. Today, at the break of dawn at 6:48 a.m., the plane departed for the Greater Southwest International Airport. They were going to be practicing landings and go-arounds. As I mentioned in another video, the simulators at the time were very limited, and oftentimes you had to actually fly the plane to learn the tricks of the trade. As the plane approached the Greater Southwest International Airport, the trainee captain at the helm asked for an ILS approach onto runway 13. ATC lets the crew know that there's another plane in the vicinity practicing touch and goes. It seems that Flight 9570 wasn't the only crew in the air that morning to get some training done. The trainee captain completes the ILS approach and makes a full stop landing with no issues. They wanted to take off again and try the landing again, so they were cleared to take off again. They made another ILS attempt, but the crew opted to go around on their second landing attempt. Coming around again, the pilots asked for a VOR approach onto runway 17. As the plane got nearer, they received their full stop landing clearance, but just a short while later, the captain asked for permission to land on runway 13. The controller agrees, but they let the pilots know that there's a DC-10 on an ILS approach onto runway 13 and added, "Caution, turbulence." The DC-10 had also taken off from Love Field to train for 2 first officers. The DC-10 had preceded the Delta Airlines DC-9 the entire day. As the DC-9 started its approach onto runway 13, the plane began to oscillate. The Delta check pilot says, "A little turbulence here." The plane began rocking slowly from side to side at first, but the oscillations quickly turned into something much worse. The plane was soon in a steep right bank, apparently of its own accord. Before long, the plane was in a 90-degree right bank, which means that the right wing pointed straight down. They were low to the ground. They were about to land after all. And as the plane banked to the right, it also lost altitude. The plane never righted itself. Soon afterward, the plane's right wing impacted the runway. The wing had hit the runway 1240 feet from the threshold of the runway. The plane rolled inverted as it slid along the runway and came to a stop 2,400 feet down the runway, off to the side of the runway. All it took was 11 seconds for this plane to go from a normal landing to being upside down on a runway. A fire consumed the airplane, and unfortunately all 4 occupants of the plane died in the crash. The investigators get the CVR and the FDR, and both black boxes are in working order. When they listen to the CVR, they hear the Delta captain comment on the turbulence. I would imagine that comment caused a bit of confusion for the investigators. You see, the weather data for Greater Southwest International Airport for that morning only recorded about 5 to 8 knots of wind, hardly enough wind to cause a DC-9 to drop out of the sky. The plane could handle this and more. Something else must have caused the turbulence, like conditions. They scoured the airplane to see if it was structurally sound. Had the ailerons or the rudder malfunctioned and jammed? If that were the case, you'd see the plane bank out of control, just like on the accident airplane. But they can find nothing wrong with the plane. The plane was in perfect working condition. A mechanical issue had not brought the plane down. They look at how they flew into the airport. They realized that a DC-10 was on a training mission and was ahead of them by about 50 seconds. The DC-10 is a wide-body trijet and can generate massive amounts of turbulence on landing. They wonder if wake turbulence is to blame. But this theory has an issue. The DC-9 had been following the DC-10 for pretty much its entire flight, and it had landed safely once before, and on that approach it followed the DC-10, and they landed safely. But after the first landing, the IFR, or Instrument Flight Rule plan that the DC-9 had been following, was terminated, and the rest of the flight was done on VFR, or Visual Flight Rules. On approach number 2, the DC-9 found itself behind the DC-10 once again, and again the DC-9 experienced no turbulence whatsoever. They went around on this approach. This time they asked for the VOR runway 35 approach to include a circling approach to land on runway 17. The crew knew that they were in VFR conditions, and so a crew member kept close watch on the traffic ahead, a DC-10 and a 727. As they flew towards their planned approach to runway 17, they worried that the DC-10 would conflict with their approach onto 17. The DC-10 was landing on runway 13, so the crew decided to follow the DC-10 and opted for runway 13 for a full stop landing. The controller says, "Okay, that'll be fine. 13 for full stop. Caution turbulence." As they went on with their approach to runway 13, a pilot says, "All right, there's 20 seconds." They had extended their downwind leg by 20 seconds so that they could put some distance between the DC-10 and themselves. The DC-10 was right off to their wing on final approach right now. Right after that, the plane started turning left to its final approach onto runway 13. The pilots turned the plane at about 3 degrees per second, and that put the plane dangerously close to the DC-10. The plane had 4 experienced pilots on board. They should have extended the downwind leg to put more distance between the DC-10 and themselves. The pilot and the FAA instructor might have been busy with the operational manual for the circling approach, and they might not have noticed the proximity of the plane to the DC-10. The pilots knew that flying too close to a heavy can cause turbulence, but they might have wrongly assumed that only small planes are affected by it. Their large DC-9 would be all right. In fact, this is only the second time wake turbulence has even been considered as a factor in a crash. Lastly, the pilots had just followed the DC-10 twice and they had no issues whatsoever, so they might have disregarded the caution turbulence warning. By the time they were done with their turn onto final, the DC-9 was only 2.2 nautical miles away from the DC-10. When the plane was at the middle marker, the plane was about to enter the wake of the DC-10. The turbulence created by the DC-10 are 2 horizontal vortexes of air. Think of 2 mini tornadoes coming off the wingtips. The right wing of the plane entered the turbulent air, and the plane banked to the left by a bit because the twirling air pushed up against the underside of the right wing. The pilot instinctively rolled the plane to the right to keep the wings level, thereby taking it into the heart of the turbulence. When the left roll started, the pilots knew that something was wrong. They called for takeoff power and go around, but with the right wing now deeply embedded into the clockwise rotating air column, the air impinged on the right wing, pushing it down, and the plane entered a steep right bank. With them being 50 feet above the ground, they were in a tough spot. This accident was a wake-up call to the industry. Up till now, no one thought that a plane as big as the DC-9 would be affected by wake turbulence. And after this crash, all planes above 300,000 pounds or 136,000 kilograms were classified as heavy aircraft. This accident also made separation between airplanes more strict. A light plane should maintain 5 nautical miles of separation, and a heavy should be at least 4 nautical miles behind another heavy. Today, flying is a lot safer, and wake turbulence is now less of a threat. Thank you for watching this episode of Mini Air Crash Investigation. If you like the videos that I make, do consider liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. A big thank you to Ryan Bomar for letting me use his amazing videos on my video. I'll catch you guys next time. Stay safe, wash your hands.